Good morning and welcome to our 2023 United States Submarine Veterans Incorporated Groton Base Holland Club Induction Ceremony. My name is Rich Cheatham and I will be your Master of Ceremony. I'm also the USSVI Groton Base Holland Club Chair. This morning I'm also going to have Chief, who am I going to have? I'm going to have Chief Jessica Barnes assisting me a little bit with this reading because there's a lot of reading and I'm tired. This is a very special occasion for all submarine veterans as we take this opportunity to formally induct 44 of our shipmates into the prestigious USSVI Groton Base Holland Club. The Holland Club is an exclusive group within our submarine veteran organization where the core requirement for eligibility is a designation qualified in submarines for a minimum of 50 years. Today's inductees represent our submarine heritage. These inductees, like all Holland Club members, are our submarine pioneers. From inductee James L. Ramage, son of Medal of Honor recipient, and World War II submarine hero Vice Admiral Lawton P. Red Ramage, and inductee John Fischetti, a Presidential Unit Citation submarine crewman, to inductee David M. Gable, a past representative of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell. Pioneers who have pushed the boundaries, who have broken the records, have charted the courses, and always by overcoming incredible odds. All Holland Club members are the historic connection and inspiration for today and tomorrow's submariners. They led the way, they set the standard for excellence for today's submarine force and their brothers, and I might say their sisters of the fin. These pioneers, our shipmates, have served our nation honorably and extremely well. They have justly earned the respect, honor, and recognition we are bestowing upon them. At this time, I would like all Holland Club members present to please stand and be recognized. We are honored by your presence. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor and privilege to present this year's Groton Base Holland Club inductees. Open that curtain. Let's give it to them, guys. All right, you guys are good. Sit down. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Hospital Corpsman Senior Chief Submarines James Mosley, United States Navy retired, and Master Chief Chip Alger, Submarine Learning Center Staff Command Master Chief will sing our national anthem. Chip, if you're anything yet, come on. But before we start, color guard, parade the colors. Parade the colors out, sir. Please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem. Just wait till we get covered.
Ready, set, forward, five. Colors, turn. Freeze and colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh.
at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Retire the colors.
Retire the colors, aye, sir. Harry. Colors. Ready. Cut. Colors. Colors. Turn. Forward. Back.
Thank you, James, Master Chief Alger, and Submarine School, Silver Dolphin Honor Guard. For those of you able, please continue to stand for the invocation. Chaplain. Naval Submarine Base Chaplain, Lieutenant Kenneth Bomberger will deliver the invocation.
Let us pray. Almighty God, I thank you for all these service members who have faithfully discharged their duties, vigilantly stood the watch, and have joined the patriotic band of brothers and sisters we call veterans. Bless today the Submariners who are soon to be inducted into the noteworthy fellowship that is the Holland Club. Give them joy in this fellowship, that entering this august company of sailors who have worn the Dolphins for 50 years, they may reflect with gratitude upon their time of service. Bless us all as we acknowledge the honor duly bestowed upon them and earned by them, and instill in us all due admiration for those whose service began and may be ended before our own lives. We lift them to you, O Almighty. Grant them to remember this ceremony for years in the future. I ask all this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, chaps. Please be seated. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to some of our dignitaries joining us this morning. Our guest speaker, Rear Admiral Arnold Lovetree, United States Navy retired. Tennessee Mike Hurley, United States Navy retired. Captain Thomas O'Donnell, Commodore Submarine Squadron 12. Captain Kenneth Curtin, Commanding Officer, Naval Submarine Base. Captain, I'm going to just stop here. Captain, I want to personally tell you thank you again and again and again. We do not do this without your help and all the folks on this base. So thank you, sir. Captain Paul Whitescarver, United States Navy retired. Derek Sutton's not here. Town Manager Burr's not here. Mayor Keith Hedrick, City of Groton. Marion Galbraith, former Mayor, City of Groton. I do know her name. Mayor, where's Mike Passwell? Mike, where you at? Mayor Mike Passwell, City of New London. Hi, Mike. Good to see you. United States Veterans, United States Submarine Veterans Incorporated. National Commander William Andrea. United States Submarine Veterans Northeast Regional Director Les Altschuler. United States USSVI National Holland Club Chairman Jim Irwin. immediate past USSVI National Holland Club Chairman Bud Atkins, and our own USSVI Northeast District 1 Commander Jeff Walsh, and Kate Atkinson, Groton Elks 4-year trustee, and somewhere I know I saw Big Al Atkins, Groton Elks immediate past exalted ruler. I would like to welcome and thank Naval Submarine School Command Master Chief Colin Boland, where you at? There you are. Naval Submarine School Command Master Chief Dean Marvin, Groton Area Chief Petty Officer Association President Chief Rob Click, Naval Submarine School Master Chief Jeremiah Marthick, Mark Shipley, and Justin Dwadberry. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to all of our commanding officers, chiefs of boats, and other command master chiefs, and especially to our submarine school students, that's you guys up there, and all other active duty civilian personnel. Before we honor the 30 onstage inductees, we would like to recognize one of these inductees who has departed on eternal patrol. Fire Control Technician, Ballistics, Senior Chief, Submarines, Donald F. Terry. We are honored to have Chief Blake McMurtry representing the Terry family. He is joined by several other Terry family members. Would the Terry family please stand and turn toward the audience? Please be seated. Rear Admiral Lotring will present Chief McMurtry, Chief with Senior Chief Terry's Holland Club ID card, induction certificates, and congratulatory letters from the following: Commander Submarine Force Pacific Rear Admiral Jeffrey Joblin, Commander Submarine Force Atlantic Vice Admiral William Houston, and Command Master Chief of the Navy Master Chief James Honig. One thing, we're waiting for letters from the Master Chief. They're in the mail, they say, I believe. So you guys will get them, just not yet. You guys can do this one. These animals. So you got a package? Oh, you gave it? Did we ever do it? You guys are sorry. Good job, Adam. I don't know whether that happened. So, get up here.
Senior Chief Donald F. Terry of Newburgh, New York, enlisted in the United States Navy in 1955 and volunteered for the submarine service. Donald received orders to the USS Tusk, SS-426, where he qualified submarines in 1961. Donald also served on the USS Alexander Hamilton, SSBN 617. Senior Chief Terry retired from the Navy in 1975 as FTBCS. He departed on eternal patrol on December 24th of 2022. Let us now pause for a moment as we remember our departed shipmate. Thank you. The following inductees are unable to join us this morning. John E. Bruce. John qualified in 1973 on the USS Fargo, SSN 650. James R. Engel. James qualified on the USS Robert E. Lee, SSBN 601 in 1971. Frank A. Engelhardt. Frank qualified in 1973 on the USS Sam Rayburn, SSBN 635. Ronald G. Grabowski. Ronald qualified on USS Thomas A. Edison, SSBN 610 in 1973. Charles C. Grooms. Charles qualified in 1968 on USS Robert E. Lee, SSBN 601. Wayne Mercer. Wayne qualified on USS Sea Devil, SSN 664 in 1969. Kevin N. Patton. Kevin qualified in 1973 on USS Nathaniel Greene, SSBN 636 in 1973. James L. Ramage. James qualified on USS Sea Robin, SS 407 in 1962. Roderick H. Breeson. Roderick qualified in 1973 on the USS Henry Clay, SSBN 625. Robert E. Symes. Robert qualified in 1973 on the USS George Bancroft, SSBN 643. Stephen D. Salzman. Stephen qualified in 1973 on the USS Seawolf, SSN 575. Bruce C. Smith. Bruce qualified in 1972 on the USS Pintado, SSN 672. Fred Smith. Fred qualified in 1966 on the USS Tusk, SS 426. A. Michael Zemet. Michael qualified in 1972 on the USS Narwhal, SSN 671.
Thank you, Jessica. Now I'd like to invite USSVI National Commander Bill Andrea to come up and say a few words. Bill.
Thank you and welcome, New Holland Club inductees, friends, guests, and distinguished guests and shipmates. On behalf of USSVI Board of Directors and all your sub-vet brothers and sisters, welcome and congratulations. When you joined the service, you became members of an elite citizen group. You became a patriot. When you chose the Navy, you became an elite patriot. When you chose the submarine service, you joined the ranks of elite sailors. You can see where I'm going with this. When you joined the USSVI, you became a member of the elite Submariners. Welcome to the Holland Club. You are now a member of the elite of the elites. I would like also to thank the Groton Base and all the members that made this great ceremony possible. And a big bravo Zulu. Well done, shipmates. Give yourselves a big hand and thank you again.
Thank you, Bill. Sorry, Admiral, for the confusion there. Gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Rear Admiral Lotrin is a native of Norwich, Connecticut. He was a career nuclear submariner for 33 years, including service for the George C. Marshall, SSBN 654 Gold and Blue Cruise, USS Providence, SSN 719, USS Pittsburgh, SSN 720, USS Annapolis, SSN 760, and command of the fast-attack submarine USS Minneapolis St. Paul, SSN 708. Ashore, his assignments include duty the U.S. Strategic Command as Subland Prospective Commanding Officer Instructor, Commanding Officer Naval Submarine School, Fellow of the Chief of Naval Operations Strategic Studies Group, Commanding Officer Submarine Learning Center, Commander Naval Submarine Training Command, and Chief Operating Officer for the Naval Education and Training Command. Rear Admiral Lotrin currently serves on the National Nuclear Accreditation Board, responsible for ensuring that commercial nuclear utilities training programs meet proper standards. He also serves as the fire chief of the Groton Long Point Volunteer Fire Company, as a state of Connecticut harbor master, and on the board of the Submarine Force Library and Museum Association, which he believes, if you are not a member, I am, if you are not a member already, he encourages you to become one. And I do too. With that, please join and give him a warm welcome to Rear Admiral Phillips.
Good morning, everyone. Rich, my speech is okay. It is. Glad you're back up. Well, thanks, Rich, for the great introduction that I wrote. It's good to know that I've been working with the Submariners. They put you to work pretty quick. We've been trying to do this for 3 years through COVID, and I've been invited and uninvited, so we finally made it. It was on my bucket list, but my dearest thanks to the Subvets guys for never giving up on me, so thanks, Subvets. Greetings to all the distinguished guests that are here. Today, Mayor Sedgwick from the City of Groton, Pissarro from London, former Mayor Galbraith from the City of Groton, and I don't know if I saw John Burke come in here. He's the town manager, he didn't make it, but he's a great guy. He's really the mayor of the town of Groton. National United States Submarine Veterans, William, Bill, Andreas here. This is a big deal having the national commander here, if you don't realize this. I recognize that, but as I'm walking in and all the Subvets are telling me, don't screw this up for me, the national guy is here. So I get it, this is pretty important. From the Subvets also, the national, and Les Balshore is here from the Northeast Regional Command, Jim Irwin, past national commander for the Holland Club, and of course Jeff Walsh, Northeast District Wing Commander. Jeff's a dear friend and former shipmate. Greetings to the Terry family. So I'm really grateful I was involved and I could do that. I really value you coming and doing this for him. I can't believe how hard that is for you to lose him recently, but he must be so proud that you did this. I know in the Holland Club, the pastor coming up, but I want to acknowledge a couple. Reverend Dave Gable is here, second row. He is one of my mentors and former bosses at Stratcom. He'll be inducted today, albeit, as he'll tell me, a little late. I have worked for him. I have known him for over 30 years, and believe me when I say, he is first and foremost a superb naval officer, and our country and submarine force owe an eternal debt of gratitude for what he has done for us. Thanks, Al. Captain Spring was qualified in 1953, so he's a Holland Club member and a great guy. I've got two people from sub school. I saw Tony Cartrochi come to the back, so I'm going to mention him. So when I was CO of Submarine School Commander, Tony Cartrochi was my exec, and Command Master Chief Mike Hurley sitting to my left as always. He was with me at Submarine School. They both taught me over 2 years about enlisted submarine training, and it changed my life forever. So my grateful thanks to both of you guys. Finally, to the Submarine Base leadership that's here today, Commodore Donald, Deborah on 12, sorry, that's how I'm always going to say it. Captain Curtin, sub from the sub base, Captain Bowling from the Undersea Warfare Development Command, Captain Paul Whitescarver. Paul was the CO of the base here. Now he leads the Thames River Heritage Project, which our museum is involved with, and he was also one of my shipmates on the Minneapolis-St. Paul. And finally, Commander Select Sutton of the officer in charge of the Nautilus ship. Gentlemen, thanks for making this a priority today. You're in the right place. Now to my submarine school students sitting up there, what a great Saturday it is for you. You look great in your Cracker Jacks. Still the best uniform in the military that's always been around. Hope we don't screw that up. But gentlemen, you were in the right place at the right time, and hopefully you'll feel it by the end. As I tried to teach my folks in the Navy, when we got on station, we knew if we were outnumbered, alone, and unsupported, we were in the right place for our country. Let me start with this. We're coming up on the 100th anniversary. So this is your history lesson. There'll be a couple of them today. We're coming up on our 100th anniversary of the birth of the idea for our dolphins. the reason why we're here today. Yes, 100 years ago, then Captain Ernest King, while serving here on the submarine base, and he later go on to be a 5-star fleet admiral, CNO, and one of the driving forces behind us winning World War II. He penned a letter to then the Bureau of Navigation, now the Navy Personnel Command, and he recommended that an insignia be created and worn by men serving in submarines. And with many creative inputs from a lot of people, including Captain King sent one in, a year later our dolphins would be authorized for the first time. So 100 years ago, Captain King had that idea. It's probably the most respected and heralded warfare device worn in the Navy. I can only think of one other, maybe, that comes close, and it's the Navy SEAL Trident pin. But why is it so respected? Why are the people that earn it so uniformly sought after, whether it's in the military, in business, or in the civilian world? And why, after all these years, would these 30 men come forward with their families from all over the country and celebrate being qualified in submarines? Why? It's worth thinking about, isn't it? In a world that unfortunately measures everything we do in seconds and minutes, short text, short video clips, why would these people think something so important after 50 years that it was worth coming back to Groton, that's how my father-in-law used to say it, Groton, Connecticut, to celebrate? My best students especially should be listening now, sitting on the edge of these comfortable Dealey Center seats as you listen to me, because I know there have already been times in your career, maybe it's when you drove up on that bus to Great Lakes, maybe when you did the moment of truth, maybe when you came through the halls here at submarine school, or maybe it's when you go through the escape tower, if that's still coming up for you, that you question yourself, is it really worth all this? Most simply stated, and you can remember this from me, our dolphins represent excellence and our selfless devotion to our shipmates. It's a commitment to excellence. Very few things in our world today, unfortunately, stand for these values. When you are working to earn your dolphins, it is your fellow submariners who will mentor you. They'll train you. They'll give you the walkthroughs, the checkouts, the exams, the boards, just like all these men behind me experienced some 50 years ago. And the satisfaction each of these men felt when they got that tough checkout on main hydraulics, torpedo room walkthrough, qualified their initial watch stations, and got the final lookups done. And when you were ready, and this is important, when you were ready, it's your shipmates that decided. They decided when you had met the right standards, but it was still up to you to do the hard work. Learn about the ship systems, where to secure the electrical loads, where to cross-connect, trim and drain, where are the emergency blow knocker valves, and how do you properly relieve the pressure on a watertight door if there's pressure behind it. And then your final exam, your boards, and your walkthrough. In my case, it was Captain Leo Wright from Submarine Group 2, who for 2 hours walked me through the boat. He asked me the toughest questions, some I still owe him probably some lookups on, and I was on the George Marshall. And he asked me all these important questions, and he wasn't finished till he was satisfied that I knew enough. I learned a great deal from Captain Wright that day. I learned how important my dolphins would be. And when you are awarded your dolphins, and you add that parenthetical SS after your name, it's your fellow submariners who have bestowed that honor on you. Not some grand university of learning or institution, not some faceless government organization, and not some group of experts that you've never met. Nope, it's a group of your friends, your shipmates. It's your fellow submariners. They've gone through exactly what you've gone through. They will have decided when you have the right maturity, when you have the right knowledge, and right experience to be qualified in submarines. We will have decided based on the most simple and stark thing that we could come up with. That is, we believe that you are ready for us to risk our lives submerging on a submarine with you and operating in the most unforgiving environment that a ship at sea can encounter. We'll go under the ocean. Being awarded your dolphins, this is a remarkably simple idea of excellence, but it's so profoundly important. Each man today has his unique story behind me about getting his dolphins and what it meant to him. I know they're willing, if you ask them, to share some of those things that happened. During COVID, we couldn't have this ceremony, but the sub-vets, my friends, put together a book with each Holland Club member's pictures, name, and boat. so that the men who couldn't attend in person had a memory of this important event. What a decent thing for these men or sub-vets to have done. National Commander, this is the quality of the Groton Base unit. As I looked through the book that they sent me, I remarked to my wife, I know every one of these men. I know them. Just look at their faces. Well, my wife, after 40 years, knows when I'm exaggerating a little bit, whether I'm an admiral or a husband. And she says, you don't know each of these men. I says, I absolutely do. Look at their faces. Look at the kid in the cruise mess that's been loading stores all day, and he's exhausted. And he's got that pack of cigarettes, well, not anymore, you guys wouldn't know, but he's got a pack of cigarettes rolled up in his t-shirt. Or the guy down in the torpedo room loading torpedoes exhaustively as they're doing emergency reload. Or the kids on the planes that are trying to maintain depth within a half a foot while they're on station. Or finally, those kids that are sitting in the cruise mess cheering on their friends who are now standing up in front of their COs and they're about to get their dolphins. Oh, I know them all. And I was lucky enough to help a few men get their dolphins. As a navigator on the Pittsburgh, one of my boats, my CO, Chip Griffiths, made it clear to me when I reported that it would be my personal responsibility to him as the ship's navigator to make sure we always flew the gold and silver dolphin flags, blue and gold silver dolphin flags from the back of the sail and the jackstaff. That means all of our sailors, officer enlisted, are meeting the time requirements to get their dolphins. To make sure I did that right, I committed to sitting every qualification board in the 2 years that I was there. Imagine that, sitting those exhausted boards down in the torpedo room or up in the wardroom, listening to the questions and making sure they had it. It meant a lot to those men, as I found out later, and my wife on social media still tells me they write in saying they remember that. One man that I helped to be recognized in submarines as qualified, I really never did meet, but I'm sure his service and life story is so representative of the men that sit behind me today, these Holland Club inductees. Today he is recognized up at our submarine school in Wilkinson Hall, basic enlisted submarine school, or BESS as we know it. He wanders around those halls at night checking on you as you're doing night study or you're getting ready for the next exam, just like you'll do on the boat, studying after watch or before serving the meals or after you shoot some trash. He's in the auditorium up there on the starboard side of the room. He has a plaque there. The plaque describes how a submarine was hit one dark night by a large commercial ship carrying fruit near the Panama Canal. He had left his home here in Connecticut, up in Putnam, Connecticut, just up the road, and joined the Navy to serve his country. He was French-Canadian, and he probably was in their Navy for a while. His folks came down to work in the mills. He had learned his ship, but most importantly, he had learned his love and commitment to his shipmates on board. As the submarine started to sink, he turned around and saw the water rushing down the hatch. Henry knew his electrical division, Chief Brown, was still aboard. So he climbed back on the submarine and he shut the hatch on himself, preventing further water from coming and completely filling the ship. But they had taken on enough water that they went to the bottom. Lucky enough for them at the time, the largest cranes in the world were there for digging out the Panama Canal. So over a 2-day effort, there was a heroic set of divers that dove down, putting cables underneath the submarine, and with these huge cranes, they could lift them up to the surface. When she broke the surface, nobody knew, but then the hatch opened, and out scurried Chief Brown, and behind him, Henry. Over 20 years ago, when I was at submarine school with Commander Pachochi and Mike Curley, we made a decision to move officer submarine school around, so we had a chance to redo the lithographs that used to commemorate our Medal of Honor winners. We decided to make them bronze plaques with reliefs, and that's what you'll see when you go up to that BESS auditorium. As I was proofing the paper things, and that's what officers do, they like to proof things a lot. As I proofed it, I called out, I said, there's a mistake that's been made here. On his name, it doesn't have those parentheticals with the SS after it. Well, the men that worked for me, now they had this uncomfortable thing to tell me how wrong I was, and when men do that, you hear the clearing of throats a lot. And sir, that means they're about to tell you you're wrong. Sir, you don't understand. When Henry Brault was awarded his Medal of Honor, there were no dolphins yet in 1924. That was the bad news. Henry had just missed it by a year. Well, when you go back up there this week, or maybe today, because you got to study, you'll go all run in there and make sure that I'm telling the truth. You'll see on the plaque the citation, and the inscription will read, Torpedoman, 2nd Class, Parenthetical, SS, Henry Brault. I'm sure to this day that Henry was pleased that we designated him as qualified for submarines on his Medal of Honor. It was the right thing to do. He was the first submariner to win the Medal of Honor for heroic actions on a submarine. When you talk to our inductees today, listen closely. It will be far less about the specific boats they served on, the missions or the patrols that they completed, but it will be about the men that they served with, that they knew, and probably some who were gone, and the ones that helped them complete their submarine qualifications. Or give them a checkout or a walkthrough, or just sometimes when they needed a lift up, gave them a word of encouragement. These are their lifelong submarine shipmates. Those men who ensured they were ready, that they had met the standard of excellence that we require, and I know each one of these men behind me did. That's why this is important, and that's why they're here today. I know that when some of you men and women come back in 2074, and knowing the Navy, you'll probably be sitting in these same seats here in the auditorium, you will have a tremendous sense of pride and accomplishment for what you did 50 years ago. My heartfelt congratulations to our newest Holland Club inductees and their families here today. Thanks again for all that you have done for your selfless service and sacrifice for our country and our submarine force. I'm proud of you all.
And now, the moment we have all been waiting for, the formal induction of our newest Holland Club members. We will read their abbreviated naval submarine biographies with an occasional anecdote or two mixed in. Our readers will be John Moore, Chief Riley French, and Joe Dan. Rear Admiral Lutrin will make presentations. Today's inductees will receive their Holland Club ID card certificates as well as congratulatory letters from the following: Command Submarine Force Pacific, Rear Admiral Devlin, Command Submarine Force Atlantic, Vice Admiral Houston, and in some cases, Master Chief of the Navy, Master Chief Honier. Again, they're in the mail. They will also receive additional Holland Club materials, including their Holland Club ball cap. At this time, I would like to invite all family members and friends. Feel free to come forward and take pictures anytime during this part of the ceremony. With that, John Brown. Thank you.
James R. Bevel. James entered the U.S. Navy in 1966 and would serve for over 20 years. His first 15 years as an interior communications electrician, advancing to EM/CM/SS. His last 5 years as a limited duty officer, James served on 4 submarines. His first submarine was the USS Nathaniel Greene, SSBN 636, on which he qualified in submarines in 1968 in only 100 days. Next, he was ordered to the USS Jaleo, SS 368, where he assisted in crew training for the Spanish Navy for the turnover of the Jaleo to the Spanish Navy as Submarino 1. His last 2 boats were the USS Nautilus, SSN 571, and the USS George C. Marshall, SSBN 654. James completed 12 deterrent patrols in total. James was selected for ensign, and he was assigned to USS Competent AFDM 6 as chief engineer. James retired from the Navy as a lieutenant in 1987. Richard Chahaki. Rick lived in London by the Thames River and was always fascinated watching the submarines come and go. After his brother joined the submarine service, he knew submarines is what he also wanted to do. Rick joined the U.S. Navy in 1969. He was ordered to the USS Skipjack SSN 585 in 1970. He qualified in submarines on the USS Skipjack in 1971. Rick served on 4 other submarines, beginning with the USS Stonewall Jackson, SSBN 634. Next was the USS Benjamin Franklin, SSBN 640, followed by the USS Ulysses S. Grant, SSBN 631, and finally the USS Sculpin, SSN 590. Rick retired from the Navy in 1992 as a QMC SS. Rick is the newest member of the Groton Base Saturday morning field day crew. Philip J. Clerkin. Phil enlisted the U.S. Navy in 1972 and volunteered for submarines. He was ordered to the USS George C. Marshall, SSBN 654, Gold Crew, reporting immediately after her Polaris Poseidon overhaul in Bremerton. Phil said, "The yards crew saw the boat taken apart and put back together in Bremerton, and I believe they were the finest of submariners in the Navy." Phil qualified in submarines in 1973 on George C. Marshall. Phil noted how he became a YN, saying, "While I was an undesignated non-qual, he was typing a letter home in the yeoman shack. YNCSS Troy Elma walked in and he asked, 'Well, boy, where did you learn to type that fast?' Phil told him it was a high school elective, and Chief Elmer immediately offered to send Phil to YNA school to prepare him to take over the YN2 billing. Best move I ever made," Phil said. And Phil made the trip through the Panama Canal and then 6 deterrent patrols. Phil was discharged from the Navy in 1976 as a YN2 SS. He said he made E5 in separations and that he never had time to sew on his new second-class crow. Craig C. Conklin. Craig joined the U.S. Navy in 1966 and volunteered for submarines. He was assigned to the USS Sunfish, SSN 649, in 1968. He qualified in submarines on Sunfish in 1970. Craig noted that Sunfish did some interesting things that he cannot talk about. But he can share that he crossed the Arctic Circle several times and was a blue nose. Also, he transited under the ice for 36 hours, and it was very cold. Craig's most interesting event on patrol was having to go inside the main condenser to repair a loose support. And Craig noted, "We were too young to know it was dangerous." He said he was most happy when they were transiting north and had to go very deep to not have a steady roll. Craig crossed the Atlantic several times, obviously under it, but also on it and over it once. Craig was discharged from the Navy in 1974 as an MM1 SS. Robert L. Biani. Bob Bob enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1972 and volunteered for the submarine service. He was assigned to the USS Nathaniel Greene SSBN 636 and qualified in submarines on Greene in 1973. Bob served on 2 other submarines, one at the beginning of her service as a plank owner on USS Jacksonville SSN 699. The other at the end of her service on the decommissioning crew of the USS Scamp SSN 588. Between submarine assignments, Bob was the Air Systems lead instructor at sub school and was a high-pressure air compressor specialist at the subbase. Bob retired from the Navy in 1992 as an MMC SS. Robert J. Doherty. Robert joined the Navy in 1967. He said, "While in boot camp, we had to pick a rating. I had to list 4 choices, and the last one, the one I had the least knowledge of, was machinist mate. You guessed it, the Navy picked MM. Robert was ordered to the USS Henry L. Stimson, SSBN 655. He qualified in submarines on Stimson in 1971. Robert said, "Along the way of my 6+ years of service, I saw parts of the world that I know I would never have visited. I was able to take advantage of excellent educational opportunities that helped me later obtain success in a technical field. Along this journey, I have met some special friends. These friends and I went through all of our nuclear training together. 2 of my dearest friends are Wayne Stanley and John Clark, both joining me on the stage this morning. I have kept in touch with these guys for over 46 years. When we get together, the stories start and the wine flows. It is like a time machine, and we are back some 50 years ago from Nuclear Power School, Bainbridge, Maryland, to prototype in Windsor Locks, Connecticut, and finally to the fleet in Holylock in Dunein, Scotland. Robert concludes that having these friends allowed him to enjoy the many good times and endure the stress and loneliness of the military. Robert separated from the Navy in 1974 as an MM1 SS. Stephen Dubois. Stephen did not want to be drafted, so he joined the U.S. Navy in 1972. His family influenced his choice to go into the submarine service. 2 of Stephen's uncles had served on nuclear submarines. His uncle, John Escalada, was one of the earliest Mexican Americans to be accepted into the submarine nuclear power program. Stephen volunteered for submarines, and after boot camp, sub-school, and MMA school, Stephen received orders to the Auxiliary Division on the USS Lewis and Clark, SSBN 644. Stephen qualified in submarines on Lewis and Clark in 1973 in Rota, Spain. He completed 5 FBM deterrent patrols. Stephen was honorably discharged from the Navy in 1976 as an MM2 SS. Robert Fetter. Robert enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1970 and volunteered for submarine service. He was assigned to his first submarine, the USS Kamehameha, SSBN 642, where he qualified in submarines in 1973. Robert also served on 3 other submarines, including USS Sam Rayburn, SSBN 635, USS Boston, SSN 703, as a plank owner, and the USS Minneapolis St. Paul, SSN 708, also as a plank owner. Robert separated from the Navy in 1986 as an MMC SS. John Fischetti. John was always fascinated with submarines. When college didn't work out, John saw the Navy recruiter the very next day. This was in 1967. While in A school, the Navy asked for submarine volunteers, and John said yes. He was assigned to the USS John Marshall, SSBN 611, and he qualified in submarines in March 1970 on board her. John completed 8 patrols, and John said this: "My proudest moment was when the crew of the John Marshall received the Presidential Unit Citation for a mission that we completed." John was discharged from the Navy in 1973 as ETN-2 SS. John Carl Franzoni. Native of Chevy Chase, Maryland, Carl Franzoni decided on a career in submarines when he was 9 years old. So he attended the United States Naval Academy, graduated in 1969, and began a career that included service on 7 nuclear submarines. First, he was ordered to the commissioning crew of the USS Hoagie, SSN 647. That was in 1971, which included the opportunity to eat breakfast with Admiral Rickover. After a deployment to the Western Pacific and Vietnam Theater, Carl qualified in submarines aboard Hoagie in 1972. His next submarine assignment was to the USS Daniel Boone, SSBN 629, where he made 5 strategic deterrent patrols, including one where he was the Wadram cribbage champion. After a tour as instructor at Naval Submarine School, he served as the navigator on the commissioning crew of the USS Bremerton, SSN 698, where he once again enjoyed breakfast with that kindly white-haired gentleman in 1981. Carl reported aboard his last submarine as the XO of the USS Will Rogers, SSBN 659, where he completed 3 strategic deterrent patrols. Carl is also proud of his service on the staff of Cruiser Destroyer Group 8, where he participated in Operation Urgent Fury to rescue American citizens from the island of Grenada during an attempted revolution. Carl completed his active duty career as an instructor in the Officer Training Department at Submarine School and retired from the Navy as a lieutenant commander in 1989. As a civilian, Carl is still serving our submarine force today as a learning standards officer at the Submarine Learning Center.
Kevin J. Gans. Kevin joined the U.S. Navy in 1969 and volunteered for the submarine service. Kevin served on 5 submarines in his 30-year naval career, 2 as cop. He qualified in submarines in 1973 on his first submarine, the USS James K. Polk, SSBN 645. Kevin's other 4 submarines were USS Daniel Webster, SSBN 626, USS George C. Marshall, SSBN 654, USS Ulysses S. Grant, SSBN 631 as chief of the boat, and USS Nebraska, SSBN 739, also as cop. In addition to riding submarines, Kevin was an FBMSTC instructor, served as a Department Master Chief of Officer Subschool, Assistant Director of Basic Enlisted Subschool, and as Submarine Squadron 4 Command Master Chief. Kevin retired from the Navy in 2000 after 30 years of outstanding service as an MTCM SS. Thank you, Kevin. John Gedney III. Jack enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1972. Jack served on 6 submarines beginning in 1973 with orders to the USS Cobbler, SS 344. He qualified in submarines aboard Cobbler in 1973. Jack served on an additional 5 submarines: USS Ulysses S. Grant, SSBN 631, USS George C. Marshall, SSBN 654, USS Fargo, SSN 650, USS Nathaniel Greene, SSBN 636, and as the ANAV on USS Albuquerque, SSN 706. Jack noted, looking back over the years I spent on 6 boats and 2 submarine operations-related shore duties, it became clear to me that my learning never stopped after initially qualifying. It increased in depth and breadth, culminating with the responsibility for training the next generation of submariners. I was blessed to qualify on one of the last World War II diesel boats, the Cobbler. One seat ahead of mine was the legendary TNCS SS T.L. Fox. Senior Chief Fox had made 4 World War II patrols and was a personal hero to me, albeit a very scary one. Every day he set an example of what a dedicated submariner should be. On my best days, I may have come close. Jack retired from the Navy in 1995 as a QMCS SS. Brian H. Gibb. Brian joined the Navy in 1971 with the intention of going into submarines. His older brother was on the USS Thomas Jefferson, SSBN 618. He was ordered to the USS George C. Marshall, SSBN 654 in 1972. Brian qualified in submarines aboard George C. Marshall in 1973. He served on 2 additional submarines, USS Nathaniel Greene, SSBN 636, and USS Will Rogers, SSBN 659. Brian shared 3 of his most memorable moments of his Navy career on each of his boats. First was being able to watch and photograph a USS George C. Marshall missile launch from the USS Range Sentinel, TAGM-22. He said, I was taking pictures for our ship's photographer after following the missile up. I brought the camera back down and could not find my submarine. Apparently the new missile compensation system didn't work properly. His next memorable time was on his second boat, USS Nathaniel Greene. While doing man-overboard drills in the Irish Sea, the main shaft broke just half of the shaft seals. The shaft broke with the loss of about a third of its length, along with the propeller. It was never recovered. His last memorable moment was on his last boat, USS Will Rogers. They were off the coast of Africa and had a casualty with the floating buoy. Brian and others had to inspect for damaged topside. To get to the area he needed to inspect, Brian had to be released from the deck safety track, leaving the deck LPO holding onto the end of his safety line. All of a sudden he heard, hold your breath, when Brian was underwater. He said it was nice that we were south of the equator in 95-degree water. By the time we got back to the sail to climb up, we were almost dry. Brian retired from the Navy in 1991 as an STS-CS SS. John E. Glau. John joined the U.S. Navy after graduating from high school in 1968, heading toward the nuclear power program. He volunteered for submarines and was ordered to the USS Henry L. Stimson, SSBN 655. He qualified in submarines on Stimson in 1973. John noted, although I was in the Navy for only 6 years and made only 3 patrols, I had a special bond with my shipmates and lifelong friends, 2 of which are on stage today. John also served briefly on USS Halibut, SSGN 587, and USS John Hancock, CDA 19, between schools. John said his Navy training and experience prepared him for a 42-year career in commercial nuclear power, adding Go Navy, Go Submariners. John was discharged from the Navy as an MM2 SS in 1974. David M. Gable. David graduated from the Naval Academy and reported to his first submarine, USS Sarda, SS-488, in 1962, and qualified in submarines on board Sarda in 1963. David noted, my father-in-law was a World War II submariner who had served on USS Sea Poacher, SS-406. Following his tour on Sarda, David attended MIT, where he was awarded 2 degrees in nuclear engineering. He served on 5 additional submarines: USS Vergara, SS-331, USS Guardfish, SSN-612, USS Kamehameha, SSBN-642, USS Lafayette, SSBN-616, and his commanding officer on USS Benjamin Franklin, SSBN-640. David's 3 commands were Commanding Officer, USS Benjamin Franklin, Commander Submarine Squadron 14, and Commander Submarine Group 2. After his promotion to Rear Admiral in 1988, David worked extensively in the area of strategic arms control, negotiating the final phases of the START I with the Russians. He attended the signing of that treaty in Moscow as the representative of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell. Before he retired in 1996 as a Rear Admiral, David had met numerous times with the Russians, not only on strategic matters, but also on negotiations regarding freedom of navigation in the high seas. David was awarded the CIA Gold Medal for his arms control work. David, thank you, Admiral, for your service to the nation. John Harwood. Jack remembered his mother telling him about a local man who had served on submarines in World War II and that he had been wounded during the war. That always stuck with him. Jack decided to join the Navy after graduating from high school in 1972. He volunteered for submarine duty and was ordered to the Auxiliary Division on USS Jack, SSN 605. Jack qualified in submarines aboard Jack in 1973. He made 2 bed runs, many shorter runs, and hit many interesting ports. Among his favorites were Florence, Italy, and St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Jack said, during my time on board the Jack, I met many shipmates, and some are still among my best friends. My 4 years serving were among the best of my life. Jack was discharged from the Navy in 1976 as an MM2 SS. Kenneth L. Hurt. The U.S. Navy came highly recommended from numerous members of Ken's family who were Navy veterans. Ken was done with high school in Fremont, Ohio, and did not want to go to college, so it seemed like a good option. In 1969, he joined the Navy. In boot camp, Ken was persuaded to join the nuclear power program. After schools in prototype, he was assigned to USS Gato, SSN 615. Ken qualified in submarines on Gato in 1973. He served on 3 additional submarines, USS Sam Rayburn, SSBN 635, USS Alexander Hamilton, SSBN 617, and USS Will Rogers, SSBN 659. He stated that my years in the Navy have served me well in my post-naval career, and I have made many friendships. Ken retired from the Navy in 1989 as an EMCS SS. Lawrence R. Labby. Lawrence enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1971 and volunteered for submarines. He received orders to the USS John Marshall, SSBN 611. Lawrence qualified in submarines on the John Marshall in 1973. Lawrence was discharged from the Navy in 1974 as a QM3 SS. Joseph John McIntyre. Joe joined the Navy in 1971 after he graduated from high school at Sarasota, Florida. His brother Bobby had joined the Navy 1 year earlier and was in a nuclear power school. Joe volunteered for submarines and went to Torpedo A School, Sub-School, and then to the USS Tenosa, SSN 606. He qualified in submarines aboard Tenosa in 1973. When Joe first arrived at the Tenosa, he and his brother Bobby volunteered for submarine duty. Joe was on Tenosa for about a year before Bobby arrived. While on Tenosa, Joe met Pat Kenny, who became his best friend for the next 50 years. Pat was also on brother duty with his brother, Jeff. Joe was just discharged from the Navy in 1979 as a TM2SS. Joe noted, all these years later, my brother Bobby is no longer with us, and Pat and Jeff are no longer with us. Joe added, so I made it here to be here this day, and in my heart, Pat, Jeff, and Bobby are here as well. Stephen A. Ricard. Steve, a native of Belmont, New Hampshire, joined the U.S. Navy in 1971 and volunteered for submarines. He received orders to the Fleet Ballistic Missile Submarine USS Nathaniel Greene, SSBN 636, where he was assigned to the Interior Communications Division. Steve qualified in submarines in 1973 while on patrol somewhere in the North Atlantic. IC-2 Ricard completed U.S. Navy scuba qualifications in 1974, and was assigned to collateral duty of the ship's diver. Steve said, after reporting to the Green, I was assigned a sea daddy by the name of PT-1SS Tom Sharps. His last name sounded familiar. It turns out Tom's uncle was the local veterinarian in my hometown of Belmont, New Hampshire. Although Tom and I had never met before the boat, we became great friends and shared some great stories, like this one. On my first day on the boat, Tom and a fellow shipmate, TM2SS DB, Jim Stevenson, were taking me on a tour. We started in the torpedo room and worked our way through the rest of the compartments. I remember Tom asking Jim to show me the aft torpedo room. Jim wholeheartedly agreed. We continued aft, so I thought, finally arriving at the aft torpedo room hatch. I was impressed. I told him we did not learn that in sub school, so I got a few chuckles and some well-deserved ribbon. Steve detached from the Green in 1975 and was briefly assigned to the USS Narwhal, SSN 671. He was discharged from active duty in 1975 as an IC-2 SSDV. Steve joined the U.S. Naval Reserves and served in command supporting Naval Submarine Support Facility. Steve was recalled to active duty in September 2001 following the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Now as a senior chief, Steve reported to the U.S. Naval Submarine Base in London Security Department. In February 2002, Master Chief Ricard took over as the senior enlisted leader for the Sub-Base Security Department. Steve was once again released from active duty in July 2003 as an ETCM SSDV. Returning to the Naval Reserves, he assumed the duties and responsibilities as the Command Master Chief of the Submarine Reserve Force. Steve retired from the U.S. Naval Reserves in October 2005 to join USSVI in 2000 and has held several leadership positions, including Groton Base Holland Club Chair, Membership Chairman, and currently as the Groton Base Saturday Morning Field Day Crew Lead and Groton Base Commander. Thank you, Steve.
Mark Schwartzel. Mark was raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, and enlisted in the Navy in 1970. Mark served on 4 submarines, 2 diesel-electric and 2 nuclear. First, he served aboard the diesel boat USS Pickerel SS-524, aboard which he qualified in 1972 as a third-class torpedo. Mark continued his enlisted career serving in various leadership positions aboard both the Pickerel and the USS Trumpetfish, SS-425. He also served on the ballistic missile submarine USS Nathaniel Greene, SSBN 636, and the fast attack USS Haddock, SSN 621. Mark left the Navy as a TMC SS in 1981 after 10 years on active service. He affiliated with the Navy Reserve in 1982, was promoted to TMC SS in 1984, and was commissioned as a limited duty officer, submarine ordnance, in 1986. Mark advanced from senior chief torpedoman to commanding officer in the Naval Reserves, commanding numerous Naval Reserve units at home and overseas. Mark was recalled to active duty for Operation Iraqi Freedom when he completed mobilization as the commanding officer, Naval Customs Battalion Tango in Kuwait. He also deployed in support of global war on terrorism, Operation Iraqi Enduring Freedom, and completed several multinational fleet exercises. Mark was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for Heroism in 1992 for heroic life-saving actions he performed during a civilian workplace shooting while on active duty. Mark retired with over 41 years of service to the U.S. Navy in 2012 as a captain. Thank you for your outstanding service. Gary Sievers. Go Gary. Gary came from a small farm town in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. He joined the U.S. Navy upon graduation from high school in 1965. Gary served on 4 submarines. First, he reported aboard the USS Alexander Hamilton, SSBN 617, and qualified in submarines on board her in 1967. On Hamilton, he completed 9 patrols, a major overhaul, and was promoted from seaman to TM2SS. Next, Gary transferred to the USS Patrick Henry, SSBN 599. On the Henry, he completed 1 patrol, a major overhaul, a DESO run, and a trip through the Panama Canal. Gary reported to USS Will Rogers, SSBN 659, where he completed 6 patrols, a mini overhaul, and was initiated as a Blue Nose. Lastly, Gary received orders to the USS Dallas, SSN 700, a whole new world to a boomer sailor. Gary said, while aboard the Hamilton, he gave an ensign a difficult time for his torpedo room signature. You can guess how his welcome aboard meeting went when the CO said, I remember you. Gary's final deployment sent him to the Indian Ocean for an around-the-world cruise with ports of call in Diego Garcia and Australia, and another transit through the Panama Canal. Gary was assigned shore duty at submarine school twice, first testing the proficiency of torpedomen and missile technicians, and then as lead instructor of the 640-688 class diving trainer. In the course of his travels, Gary earned the Order of the Golden Dragon, Ancient Order of the Shellback, the Order of the Magellan, and the Order of Dix certificates. Gary retired from the Navy in 1985 as a TMC SS. Thank you for your service. Wayne Stanley. In 1966, a month and a week after his 18th birthday, Wayne left Minnesota for boot camp, designated to be a nuke. Following all the usual machinist mate and nuclear power schools and training, plus a 9-month assignment to the USS Sperry AS-12, Wayne was ordered to the USS Theodore Roosevelt, SSBN 600. He made 3 patrols. Wayne qualified in submarines on board Roosevelt in 1970. He also served on the USS Henry L. Stimson, SSBN 655, where he made 2 patrols, 1 before and 1 after shipyard refueling and overhaul. Wayne was discharged from the Navy in 1974 as an MM-1 SS. Thank you for your service. Rodney Totten. Rod was raised in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, was concerned he might be drafted and sent to Vietnam. Ron decided to join the Navy with a buddy. Rod passed the physical and his buddy did not. Rod joined the U.S. Navy in 1971. While in storekeeper A school, Rod realized that he got motion sickness. He figured that he would be less likely to get motion sickness on submarines, so he decided to volunteer for submarines. Rod asked his mother what she thought about him going into submarines. She assured him that she would worry no matter what type of ship he was served on. Rod was ordered to the USS Jack, SSN 605, as a storekeeper in 1972. He qualified in submarines on board Jack in 1973. Rod made 2 med runs, 1 northern run, where he was initiated a Blue Nose, and was TAD to the USS Cargo, SSN 650. Rod was honorably discharged from the Navy in 1975 as an SK-2SS. Thank you. H. Patrick Urello. Pat grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and enlisted in the Navy in 1969. Without the benefit of submarine school, Pat reported to his first submarine, USS Simon Bolivar, SSBN 641, where he qualified in submarines in 1973. Following his tour on Bolivar, Pat reported to the USS George Bancroft, SSBN 643. He also served on 2 submarine tenders, the USS Frank Gable, AS-40, and the USS Hundley, AS-31. 3 of the highlights of Pat's naval career was his qualification in submarines, his promotion to Chief Petty Officer, and his commission as an ensign. Pat also mentioned that he was honored to have the privilege to have served with the caliber of people he encountered during his time in the submarine force. As an example, his first duty station at Naval Submarine Power School, his commanding officer was Commander Frank Kelso, who subsequently was promoted to 4-star admiral and became the Chief of Naval Operations, the most senior officer in the United States Navy. Pat's last commanding officer at Submarine Force Headquarters was Admiral John Richardson, who also was promoted to 4-star admiral and became the Chief of Naval Operations. Pat said, "In between these two were many outstanding sailors, from petty officers to captains, who he counts himself fortunate to have served with." After 30 years on active duty, Pat retired from the Navy as a lieutenant commander in 1998. After his retirement from the Navy, Pat served in a civilian capacity as the Inspector General for the commander of the submarine force in Norfolk, Virginia, for an additional 15 years of service to the submarine community, retiring in 2013. Pat states he is blessed to have his wife Pam, along with his 5 granddaughters and spouses, some of his grandchildren and great-grandchildren here with him today to share his special day. Pat is the past Groton Base Holland Club chairman and has hosted several of these induction ceremonies. Thank you, Pat. Charles E. Warrington. Charlie graduated from Oswego, New York High School and joined the Navy in 1970. Charlie served on 4 submarines, 2 as chief of the boat. In the beginning, after torpedoman and launcher tech schools, Charlie was assigned to the USS Simon Bolivar, SSBN 641. Charlie qualified qualified in submarines on Boulevard in 1973. He also advanced from TM3 to TM1 SS while on board her. The next submarine Charlie was ordered to was the USS Nathaniel Greene, SSBN 636, as a missile technician leading petty officer. Finally, Charlie was chief of the boat on his last two submarines. First as Cobb on the USS Whale, SSBN 638, and as a commissioning Cobb on the USS Wyoming, SSBN 742. Charlie completed 15 SSBN patrols and 3 years on an SSN. In between submarines, Charlie was an instructor in sub-school, assigned to Commander Submarine Group 2, and was the Command Master Chief of Naval Submarine Base, New London. Charlie retired from the Navy in 1997 as an MTCMSS. Charlie served as the USSVI Groton Base Chairman of the Board of Trustees. Thank you, Charlie. You want to go back? Walton. Jerry Walton apparently, whoa. Jerry Walton apparently was not able to be here today. Oh, you there? I'm sorry, it was out of order here.
You're right, I screwed up today.
All right. Jerry Walton. Jerry enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1972 and volunteered for the submarine service. Jerry was ordered to the USS Drum, SSN 677, and qualified in submarines underway in 1973 aboard her. During his time aboard Drum, he completed one Westpac deployment. Jerry was discharged from the Navy in 1976 as an IC-3 SS. Thank you for your service. Dexter White. Dex enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1972 and volunteered for submarines. After boot camp, he attended Steam and Electric Plant School and Submarine School before he was ordered to the USS Archerfish, SSN 678, as a machinist mate auxiliary. I don't understand why you went to electric school. Dex qualified in submarines on board the Archerfish in 1973. While aboard Archerfish, Dex deployed to the Mediterranean Sea, the North and Western Atlantic Ocean, and to above the Arctic Circle, where he was initiated as a Blue Nose. Dex was honorably discharged from the Navy in 1976 as MM3 SS. Thank you for your attention. Edward C. Wiley. Ed's father had been in the U.S. Navy. After high school, Ed had to make a tough life decision, the draft or Vietnam or the Navy. With some encouragement from his father, Ed and a friend enlisted in the Navy in 1971 under the Buddy Program. While in boot camp, with only days to go, Ed heard they were looking for volunteers for submarines. Ed volunteered and his buddy did not. Ed served on 2 submarines. His first submarine was the USS Corporal, SS 346, where he qualified in submarines in 1973. Ed noted, "I was the last man to qualify in submarines on the Corporal. Corporal got to fly the Silver Dolphin flag, signifying all enlisted were submarine qualified one last time, for only one day, before we sold the boat to Turkey." Ed was the decommissioning of the USS Corporal. His second submarine was the USS Trout, SS-566. Ed was honorably discharged from the Navy as an RN2 SS in 1975. Thank you.
Admiral, thank you. Before I let you off the stage this morning, All right. Before we let you off the stage, we'd like to present you with a token of our appreciation, a small memento of today's ceremony, a framed program autographed by all our newest Holland Club members. It says Rear Admiral Arnold O. Lotrin, Holland Club 2023 presenter and guest speaker. All right. Holland Club Class 2023. Retrieve your Holland Club ball caps. Have we got one? Oh, not yet. That wasn't the problem, guys. Everybody got one? Good. Let's go on. Class of 2023, please. And good job. Those knees like I'm creeping. Cover. Please welcome US.SVI National Holland Club Chairman Jim Irwin to say a few words.
Thank you, Rich. To the inductees, congratulations. What more can be said? I know you, when you first joined the Navy, you never really thought about this as something that would be happening. I did this 5 years ago, and it was incredible. And I'm sure you will remember this day forever. So, now, the Admiral took the sub-school folks ahead to 2074 when he figures that they'll be sitting up here or sitting somewhere getting their Holland Club. I'd like to take this group back 50 years when you would have been the one sitting up in the balcony there, and just think about who you would be looking down on that had qualified 50 years before you received your documents, the 20s. These were the guys that either went through World War I or were, if they were around long enough, they'd be in World War II as America's greatest generation. So, I mean, this honor is just absolutely amazing. It connects the past, the present, and the future. And I just find the little story the Admiral told about
Henry Brault. It's just, all of these things, they just keep coming together more and more. So, that being said, I'd like to thank everybody that's joined us here today on this special occasion, and a special thanks to the newest members of the Holland Club, and congratulations. Senior Chief Summer Technician, Submarine Bob Dillon, United States Navy, retired, will read the World War II Submarine Veteran Creed. If you look at your programs, Tony Fiello, our World War II young man of 100, soon to be 101 in September. Unfortunately, they have a family funeral to attend, so he was unable to join us this morning. So I'm going to ask Bob Dillon's going to read that, followed by the reading of the USSVI Creed by USSVI National Commander Bill Andre, and then the Naval Submarine School students will recite the Sailing Creed. That's you guys.
Congratulations, shipmates. And two of my former sonar watchstanders, Phil and Brian. Brian's one of my ski pups. The World War II Submarine Veterans Creed. To perpetuate the memory of those shipmates who gave their lives in submarine warfare. To further promote and keep alive the spirit and unity that existed among United States submarine crewmen during World War II. To promote sociability, general welfare, and good fellowship among its members, and pledge loyalty and patriotism to the United States government. And now I believe it's time for
Bill?
Commander.
One more time, congratulations, gentlemen. Our USSVI Creed, to perpetuate the memory of our shipmates who gave their lives in pursuit of their duties while serving their country. That their dedication, deeds, and supreme sacrifice serve as a constant source of motivation toward greater accomplishment. Pledge loyalty and patriotism to the United States of America and its Constitution. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Bob, Bill, all of you future Holland Club members who recite the Creed. Before Chaps gives the benediction, I do have a couple of quick announcements. First, immediately following this ceremony, we would like all the inductees and Chief out in the front, stage, steps out in the front here, we're going to get a group photo. I know some others, I think the Marshall and the Green are also trying to do a group photo. So folks, if we can just accommodate them. So what we're going to ask is that you just give them a second to get off the stage. Next, I'd like to point out that Captain Curtin has invited all of us to join him and his team for a brief reception outside on Dealey Center Plaza immediately following the group photo. All are invited to stop by and meet some of the Submarine Base leadership team, have a look around Dealey Center Plaza, and enjoy a taste of the very limited run of... There you go, Holland Club Lager. It's brewed for you. The buses will begin running approximately 11:30, and finally, please join us at the Subvet Clubhouse after the ceremony. A lot of Groton-based folks have been working very hard to ensure that there are plenty of food, camaraderie, and drink, including Holland Club Lager. Just a note, due to the very limited parking at the clubhouse, and it is all uphill no matter where you go, we ask that you drop your guests off at the clubhouse and then please park at the World War II Memorial, 37 Bridge Street. We have a bus. It will be making constant loops. We will get you from parking to Subvet and then back. Cap, please join me. For the benediction.
Let us pray. Eternal Father, strong to save, preserve, I pray, these sailors now fully inducted into the goodly fellowship that is Holland Club. Bless them and grant that they look fondly upon their time of honorable service. Whether they were motivated to join this silent service for love of country, for love of the sea, to get away from Vietnam, or just looking for employment. In your wisdom, you connected them to the submarine force, and they stayed with it, serving the full measure of their time. Perhaps some feel it has been more than full measure. As they look back to their well-beloved boats or the moderately disliked ones, recalling close friends and shipmates surrounding them now or eternally on patrol. Bestow upon them all your divine and holy care and consolation. They have plowed the furrows of the sea and now reap the rewards of their vigilant labor. I ask all this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Chad. Before we conclude the ceremony, I would like Greg Kane, Master Chief Dominic Grimaldi, Chief Jessica Barnes, John Moore, Chief Riley French, Joe Dam, and Bob Doolin to join me here on the stage. I would also like Alex Doucette, Stan Mathis, Bob Sharp, Al Kensel, John Carsapolo, Bob Gustafson, Harold and Kirk Hoagland, Joel Kessler, Jim Bowman, Gary Schmidt, Mark Jones, Lenny Robbins, Charlie Murray, Jim Lott, and Phil. So please stand wherever you are and be acknowledged. You guys all still stand up. Sit down and you guys stand up. There are a lot of folks that go and put a lot of effort to make this happen. These are just some of the folks and the other folks that I mentioned. So let's give them some love.